Hello guys, and another little note on our little Pfsense build and how to build a router. On the beginning here, I will show you what I used. I used one of these boards, which is a ASUS PXH61 revision 2.0, an i55 board. I only had a little dual core in this system, which is a Intel Pentium G2030. That's an i55 socket. Has no AES encryption. Ow. Sorry about that. And believe it or not, I found that this is more than adequate for the Pfsense. Now, when they upgrade to a newer version where they require AES encryption for it, that will become obsolete when it comes to the processor. And that's just due to them upgrading where they have to have encryption. Now, later on, if I really wanted to get the encryption in, I can upgrade this to an i5, which, believe it or not, as long as it's not required to have the encryption, I'm not even going to really care, because I use this internally behind a firewall anyway. I mean, so dual firewalls isn't really used. But the thing is, the other one only has one port, where I want more ports, so I'll have to either use a switch and use the DHCP on my first one, because it's a router slash firewall, which I really don't like that concept and everything. I'd much rather have a dedicated machine for all my DHCP stuff. And that DHCP is what gives the IPs out to your computer. It requests an IP when it connects, and it gives you an internal IP that you can use to connect with, and that therefore identifies you and makes sure that your internet connection is basically stable. And in a nutshell, that's what sorts the downstairs garbage that my mom sits there and watches on YouTube or anything like that, to my upstairs garbage that I use for, let's say this. Now, this is an exact picture of what I used for my router. As you can see, you can use this for a gaming rig too. It only requires a gaming rig. Most of the time, most people believe needs to have this full board and all these sockets and everything else. No, you don't actually really need it. It just has to fit in your case and do the application that you need. It's got a 16 times graphics interface. Okay, let's bring it up. It's PCI Express 16. Okay, well, it's perfectly legit for it. So it will do PCI Express 16. Is that 3.0 though? Actually, I don't know. I haven't had a problem with it yet, so. And as you can see, you have your AGP, so it runs a little slower. As long as it runs your game, it really doesn't matter. Later on, you can always upgrade to a bigger board or whatnot. Most of the time, I find a lot of people just want to get working. Now, it only has 2 RAM slots. That's the only thing that kind of sucks about this board. And if you're thinking about buying this board right here, this board is very expensive. Okay, and Newegg right now, it's like $130 some. The only reason I'm using this board is because I got it for $20 with the CPU. And most of the time for a Pfsense build, they want you to have dual NICs. This does not have one. I used a Ethernet card in the AGP because it was a Pfsense build anyway, so it's not going to be that. And the next thing is, as long as you have more than one port, you can use it for a Pfsense. You can use this as a wireless card or just, Ethernet cards. If you did a full board, which has more slots than the PCI Express, then you could use a wireless card slash Ethernet card, go wild with it. But the biggest thing is if you do go that route, it's not recommended to have a wireless device actually part of your Pfsense build. It's not recommended. I don't really mind it myself because in order for somebody to get wireless around me, they would have to go basically, we have nothing too much around us besides one road. Our houses are so spread apart that my wireless signal is pretty much garbage once it gets outside the house. Now, to delegate this into, if you don't need like a lot of speed, you could go online on eBay and buy yourself a wireless G card that plugs into this. And a G card for transmission on a Pfsense build, it's not really going to go through walls very good and everything else. So the outside of your home could basically be very weak where you don't have to worry about somebody accessing your internet anyway. You could literally leave no password if you really wanted to. I don't recommend no password, but if you wanted to, the option is there. Now you're probably thinking, well, why don't I just do a bigger thing? Like I said, this is what I used, and it's because I got it for like $20. I mean, there's no reason to go spend a crap ton of money for something. Now, the specs and stuff and things that I used for a case is one of these. This is my case that I used for my Pfsense router, each its own on how you want to spell that. And there it is right there. It comes in black, green. It's somewhere on Newegg. It's not very hard to find. And I actually enjoy it. Now, for the biggest sense of it, there is only a few things that you actually do need. The case, which you see before you, which you can use anything as long as it, supports your size board. This is an IXT board, which is just basically one square. It's the smallest that you can get in this type of series. It's smaller than a micro ATX, but it does still fit in an ATX case. Okay? So if you have a monster size case that you're not using, you can still fit this in. You just can't put like a full board that's got, 7 slots into a small case. I mean, it just doesn't fit for obvious reasons. But like I said, I use this because I got it for $20. The power supply that I'm using for this is actually only I think it's like a 350 watt. And that is due to I already had it. There's no reason for me to go out and buy this big honking power supply for something that's only going to run very small. Now I have another board that goes into another power supply. It goes into a U1 server case. It's only 180 watt. I can actually use that if I really wanted to without a problem. The only time that these two power supplies would have an issue is when I put a graphics card into this board. Okay? The graphics card under this board would be really, really honking on power, and that would be bad in so many ways. Now, for a hard drive, I actually decided and experimented a few. I'm tired. Long day. I actually could use, and I had a solid state 80 gig in for Pfsense. You can use that. I mean, it's overkill and stuff. It's not really gonna, hurt, I guess. But if you're looking for longevity, I would highly recommend you get a Western Digital 160 gig, I believe, hard drive. They're around, I think, $20 brand new, and they're actually really, really good drives. I've used them for like little storage things, and it done wonderful for a while. And you could probably get you a small 10,000 RPM. I mean, it does not have to be a terabyte hard drive or something like that. If you want to stick something like that in there, go for it. You got the spare drive and the money to burn or whatever. There's nothing wrong with it. But Pfsense could actually run on probably a little 8 gig USB if you really wanted to. But I don't recommend that because you don't get the full features when you're running on a USB like that. And USBs have a tendency of going out or acting funky sometimes. So, like I always tell people, experiment. I showed you my setup, which is perfectly fine. I mean, if you wanted to, just basically use this like a normal router, guess what? You can literally put a 5-port in a 5-port adapter in the PCI Express slot, 5 ports, and then you got your one on your board that gives you 6. You can go crazy with that, or do like I did. And if you needed more ports, I actually have a 16 slot 16 port Lenski switch, which you can use a switch as long as it's on your LAN connection. You can have just 2 ports, and that would be more than enough. And this will give you gobbles of speed. I mean, it'll be like grease lightning fast. And it's due to consumer grade routers have very little CPU. They're like the bottom of the barrel. Okay? So when you get something like this that has more performance, that it can basically just go, hey, I only require 200 megahertz to run, but I have a gigahertz. It's going to throw out tasks and throw out packets as fast as possible. You're going to get so much more bandwidth due to this. Because when you ask the internet, hey, connect to this website, that 200 megahertz router that you might have that's down there that's ancient as dirt, it's going to take like a few seconds for it to even ask your internet service provider, where you get your internet from, hey, do this. Because remember, it's got to package all that stuff up and send out. Well, that packaging process takes performance out of your router. And then if you're like me, who actually has 3 or 4 computers all at the same time on, then that's going to take a little bit more, routing to do, because you got 5 continuous devices. Well, most of the time I find that consumer grade routers, after about 4 or 5, it starts to struggle. I mean, even the really good ones, you get 5 devices on it, it starts to struggle with the packaging and everything else for routing. And I'm not going to knock them. They do their job very, very well on intense applications, for 1 or 2 computers. But you can't sit here and say that it's good for everyone. If you only have 1 computer on the network all at the same time, honestly, you should just run you an Ethernet cable straight from your modem where you get your internet from, and run it exactly that way. Even if it's a long cable of like 100 feet, you're going to get an insane amount of speed anyway. If you want to do a wireless router that way, I would probably be against it, just due to you only got 1 device. Why would you want a router there anyway? Which will probably bottleneck, because anytime you get a router, even at the 2.4 gigahertz range or the 5 gigahertz range, any type of walls and stuff blocks it. It lowers your signal. Like even now, I've got a wireless G card that's running off the 2.4 gigahertz, channel 11, or maybe it's channel 3. I don't know. I know I selected auto when I did mine. And I've got like $100 router right now. It's like $100. I forget what it is. I just got it not long ago, so I kind of set it and forget it. But it's not at full strength, but I still get really, really good. My internet only will go up to 27, and even without full signal, I still get 20 megabytes. So that's good for this area, for me anyway. They have bigger packages and everything else, but I went on it for a month, and it just doesn't seem like it's any much better. So basically, they probably scammed me for an extra $50 a month, which is actually quite terrible. Now that I think about it, it's scary. But like I said, this is my motherboard. I actually had the RAM that I had was Kingston DDR3, 8 gigabytes, and it was 800 megahertz frequency. Very, very decent stuff. PC3, it was 1280. Well, 12,800 was the PC3 numbers. But I only used 1 of them, and I'm not going to lie, it was more than enough. Now, if you're going to ask the question of, do I really need 8 gigs? No, you do not. You can actually do it with 2 gigs. Perfectly fine. For like 4 PCs. Or 5. Most of the time I had about 5. Now, the interesting thing is that it didn't use hardly anything. I mean, honestly, it barely used anything as well. So, is this still overkill? Yeah,
It's overkill, big time. The good thing about it is that it's fine to be overkill. Now, you're probably thinking, why make this video and why am I speaking on kind of giving Pfsense kind of like an A+? Because it deserved it. I mean, it literally deserves it. Like I said, I've got 20 bucks in the motherboard and CPU, okay, with the processing fan. All I had to do was stick this in a case and RAM, and that's about it. I mean, the power supply I already had. I mean, pretty much anybody probably has a power supply that will be adequate for this without a video card. 350 watt or even a little 400. And the biggest thing is, look at the math for it. I've got a $100 router downstairs, and my maybe $75 pre-built, my actual built router with the Pfsense is actually faster. Like, literally, I get no degradation. I mean, my internet's fast as it possibly can go for all my computers, and this one literally drops off at about 4. I can't even run all of mine. And you're probably thinking, well, why aren't you running your Pfsense router right now? It's due to this is the only board that I actually have to get online with right now that can do what I need for this kind of stuff. And it's just due to somebody breaking my old computer, which is a jerk face. But for any who, I just wanted to bring this point that a Pfsense router is actually worth it. Even if you use it just for a wireless router, it's worth it. I assure you. Get a wireless adapter, stick it in it. That's what you need. And it will be far better than what you have right here at your home. I mean, for a wireless router that I need to support all the good stuff that I have, I would have to spend way over $100 and some dollars. Maybe even into the $300 range. So, really, what could go wrong with you building your own? I mean, what? You learned something? I mean, that's the whole point of the video, right? To learn something? There's plenty of tutorials. And there's benefits to it. I mean, if, let's say, for instance, right now, you went and built this, that would be great. I mean, you learned something. And if there's any problem, Pfsense has been around. I mean, you know, I'm not saying they're like Cisco or anything like that, but it's been around, and, you know, this is supposed to be commercial grade application. And you know what? I honestly see the performance in it. I actually would recommend it, and I went from a Pfsense build to back to a store-bought router, and honestly, I'm never going back. Nope. I don't care what it is when it comes to a router. I'm not going back. I actually am going to be a Pfsense fan for a very long time, I could see. Unless they do something stupid and degrade my experience with them, then, you know, that's the way it is. So for the most part, let's bring up my PC specs, okay, which is going to show an image. Okay, this is a specky program. This is what's in it right now. I literally just put an operating system with a spare hard drive in it. just to get online and stuff, but this is exactly the kind of setup that I was using. Windows 10 would be Pfsense, that would be your operating system. And like I said, it was the Intel G2030 at 3 gigahertz. This is running high for temperature. When I had it in a Pfsense, it would run 30 degrees all the time. Like literally. 8 gigs DDR3. This is saying that it's 600 and some megahertz. That's due to it stepping down. A lot of computers anymore step down like megahertz and stuff like that. If I start boasting and start using memory like to the extreme, I do believe this would change to 800 megahertz because it actually is 800 megahertz RAM. It's just stepping down because it's not needed. Now, the motherboard, like I said, is a P8H60-I revision 2, and it is an 1155. It comes with integrated graphics, so you don't have to worry about a graphics card or anything silly like that. And hard drives really don't matter. You already heard my recommendation. Just go get you a 160 Western Digital. It'll last forever and be just as fast as anything else. Slap your network card on there. If you need more connections, use a switch. And that's about it, guys. I mean, this is my little ramble on a Pfsense build and what hardware I used. And that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, so like, hit, subscribe. This is War over and out, and thanks for watching. Peace out, everybody.